Hello team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan MS Pearce. This is going to be a Ukraine war equipment specs discussion. I was going to have this as part of my military aid video because there's new information out about the Flamingo FP-5 cruise missile that the Ukrainians are producing. And there was actually so much to talk about. I thought I might as well go back to the beginning, have a look at the specs and discuss this missile and see, what it's capable of and question how much of these missiles we are going to see. Now, just to remind you, the FP-5, the Flamingo missile, looks like this. Hallmarks back to World War II, some might argue. And we have a picture of the missile with a pink tip there. Some people hypothesizing why it's called a Flamingo, and we'll look a little bit at that. Here is a launch of the FP-5 as well. I think it includes launch the FP-1, but you can see that it has a booster underneath that it then ejects, and that gets it off the ground and into the air where it can carry on its journey. So that is the FP-5. And it is a fairly sizable missile compared to others we have seen. I mean, look at the size of that compared to the bloke at the other end. So Ukrainian company Firepoint has released additional information on significant updates to the FP-5 Flamingo cruise missile. Several types of new warheads focus on the production of in-house engines and their mass adoption. The FP-5 carbon body is produced in 6 hours using automated technology which reduces its visibility to enemy radar. The Ukrainian cruise missile flies 50 meters above the ground. According to Militiani, in the near future, the new enterprise will begin local production of simplified engines, and that's what we're going to look at in more detail. Here is a video that supposedly shows an FP-5 striking an oil refinery, but I don't know that you can tell that it was. You can see there's a sizable explosion there, and that's because this bad boy has a pretty big warhead. Let's go to the Wikipedia page before looking at a couple of other sources that give us some further information on what's going on. So the FP-5 is a Ukrainian ground-launched cruise missile developed by defense firm Firepoint, revealed on the 18th of August 2025. The missile is fitted with a 1,150 kilogram warhead. So think of something like a Lancet has like a 3.5 kilogram warhead. An FPV drone usually is going to be, a few kilograms. Sometimes they can drop like a 10 kilogram anti-tank mine. This is 1,150 kilograms. So that is a huge warhead compared to a lot of what we have seen. Now, it supposedly has a range of 3,000 kilometers. The missile, similar in appearance to the Millennium Group FP-5 cruise missile, is in serial production, and they are targeting 210 units a month. They're wanting to get up to 7 a day. Now, the circle error probable, I don't know if that is actually mentioned. Accuracy, 14 meters. So your circle error probable there is 14 meters. That means, to remind you, 50% of the missiles will land within 14 meters of the target. And 50% of the missiles can land anywhere else. Now, it might be that 100% of them land within 14 meters. But of course, if your target is quite precise, if it's not huge, like 1 meters to 14 meters, that's quite a big difference. But of course, this will pack quite a punch, and anything that's within 14 meters is going to suffer some damage at the very least. So that's fairly accurate. Now, the question is that claim itself accurate? Okay, there were claimed usage. There was a claimed usage of these against a sort of base that had hovercrafts near the sea, and one hit the edge of the base, one missed, and one completely missed. The second one that missed still did damage to a hovercraft and what have you. Another one completely missed. So, we're not really sure what that tells us about the accuracy. That could still be a case of all of them fitting within 14 meters circle error probable, or it might not. There have been some claims that production has been delayed, and that could be because they are wanting to improve the accuracy here. Firepoint, a Ukrainian defense startup group founded by a group of friends from non-military backgrounds, including construction, game design and architecture, began development of the FP-5 Flamingo following the 2022 full-scale invasion. The missile was first publicly revealed on the 17th of August 2025 by Associated Press photojournalist FP-5 during a test launch at a hidden facility in southern Ukraine. So this was the article that went alongside with what you just heard. The photojournalist taking, I presume, this video here. This is what was linked. I'm going to turn the sound off there, and you can see the pink head of the Flamingo and taking off and using that booster to get up into the air. And there you go. So that was recorded, and this was the first introduction really to the missile. Zelensky announced the serial production had begun and described it as, quote, the most successful missile we have. The Associated Press reported that the nickname Flamingo originated when early production units of the missile had a pink colour due to an error at the factory, but this was denied by 5 Point CTO. The Economist and Politico, on the other hand, reported the name was chosen to highlight the role of women in senior positions at the company, with test prototypes painted pink to support the name. Who knows? Okay. OSINT analysis and reporters have noted the striking similarities between the FP-5 Flamingo and the FP-5 missile advertised by defense industry startup Millennium Group at IDEX 2025, which is a defense industry conference and expo. With the advertised capabilities, design, and even the model number being identical, Millennium Group is a company registered in the UK, though media reports state it is based in the United Arab Emirates and did business in Ukraine prior to the Russian invasion. An analyst has described Firepoint as operating under Millennium's umbrella, using Millennium's technology and connections to produce the FP-5 locally. I find this very interesting. The Economist assessed that the production process is partially conducted abroad, with Firepoint stating that over 90% of final assembly is done in Ukraine. According to Ukrinform, the weapon threatens 90% of Russia's arms manufacturing capacities. Possible target categories include oil refineries and energy infrastructure. Firepoint officials noted their drones and missiles are partly responsible for airport closures and high gasoline prices in Russia. Okay, so that would then lead us to believe that possibly is an FP-5 hitting an oil refinery, because it appears that the FP-5 peeps have admitted that they have hit hydrocarbon facilities. Now, it could also take out military production facilities and weapons depots, described as targets for the missile's 1,150 kilogram warhead, and command centers and strategic infrastructure identified as priority targets given the missile's capabilities. Okay, so I'm not going to go too much into the design here and read the entire page. I want to look at production. So serial production of Flamingo was claimed to have begun in mid-2025, initially at the rate of approximately 30 missiles a month, so one a day. According to Politico's interview with Firepoint CEO Irina Turek, the missile has successfully completed battlefield trials and entered serial production with a target capacity of 210 monthly by October. Now, this is where there was a rumor that they had put that back to 2026, so we don't really know what they're building at the moment. Firepoint announced in September 2025 that it had increased production of its Flamingo cruise missile from 30 per month to 50. So they have, apparently, according to them, increased it to almost 2 a day, with plans to reach 7 missiles per day by the end of the year. The company's service manager confirmed that the Flamingo had entered serial production, with scaling up being the primary focus for meeting expanded production targets. The weapon system represents Ukraine's most advanced long-range strike capability. In September 2025, the Danish government announced that a subsidiary of Firepoint will start production of solid rocket fuel for the Flamingo in Denmark from the 1st of December 2025. Denmark temporarily suspended 20 laws and regulations to open the plant. Now, there have been many supposed uses of the Flamingo, and the Russians, when they panic every night and claim that there are missiles attacking, particularly in the Crimea area, they claim that flamingos, like they always used to claim, storm shadow alerts. Very rarely was, and it probably very rarely is a case that flamingos are being used. But if they are producing 1 or 2 a day, and that is true, then they're going to be using 1 or 2 a day. Okay, let's average that out. It could be that they stockpile them and send off 10 every 5 days. But do we have any knowledge of this? Well, if you go through and look at Flamingo, if you just put in in fact, I don't think it's there. If I was just to put in Flamingo to the socials, then there were claims that actually they were used last night at one of the air bases last night. I don't know if I have it here. Let's see if I can find that. It might be on Twitter. I can't quite find what I was looking for. There was some firm's data and the suggestion that one of the pumping stations was taken out by an FP-5 over the last couple of nights. But here is a claim that Novoshakhtinsk oil refinery was on fire for its fourth day. I reported this at the time, and the claim was, at least from some people, that was taken out by an FP-5 Flamingo cruise missile. So, variously used, arguably. On the 30th of August 2025, Ukrainian sources reported that Flamingo missiles were used to target a Federal Security Service outpost in Crimea in what was described as their first combat use. So that's only on the 30th of August. Some of these were prior to that. I'm just trying to look when this was. That was the 23rd of August. So that was before the first supposed use. According to these reports, at least 3 missiles struck the facility, causing structural damage. This is the one that hit the hovercrafts, and reportedly damaging 6 hovercraft while killing 1 Russian serviceman. Follow-up analysis of satellite imagery showed that 1 missile directly hit the barracks building, another landed wide of the hovercraft storage area, and a third exploded near some objects east of the facility. Okay, so there you go. We have heard a lot about this over the past month or two. A lot of people claiming it's being used and warning it's being used, as the Russians do on a nightly basis. But we're never quite sure whether it really is. Here, a source says new warheads and in-house engine production for the Flamingo, and other takeaways from Firepoint press conference. The focus for the Flamingo now is to make it as widely used as possible. The company is satisfied with the accuracy, almost satisfied with mass production, but not yet satisfied with the scale of launches, which mainly depends on the number of people who can go out for the launch. Interesting. The only area where Firepoint does not work directly is warheads. This component is manufactured and developed by other Ukrainian companies. In other words, Firepoint doesn't make them. They have to get the warheads in. According to Tarek, a cluster warhead and many other types will soon be created as well. Currently, the missile uses a penetrating warhead that breaks through thick concrete and penetrates 10 meters underground. Production is almost fully automated and divided across many locations. As of early September, the production rate is about 2 missiles per day, planned to reach 210 by the end of the year. Currently, the company uses a stock of old turbojet engines with a remaining resource of less than 10 hours. There are thousands of such engines. In fact, this is broadly what the Militiani article talks about. So, let's go and read that in full. It's a short article, don't worry. Firepoint, though, has revealed upgrades to its FP-5 Flamingo cruise missile, new warhead types, in-house engine production, push for mass deployment, and the FP-5's carbon fibre fuselage is built in 6 hours with automated tech, reducing radar visibility, and flies under 50 meters. Okay, so Militiani. Firepoint localizes production of jet engines for cruise missiles. So it's not just about assembling the thing itself, but they want to localize engine production, because at the moment they're just getting engines that already exist from around the world, it appears. And obviously they're going to make fuel, solid jet fuel for that, and also the warheads they are having to get in. Now, I don't know if they have any intention to make those warheads, but nonetheless, here is the Militiani article based on the company's press conference. So, before the start of mass production, Firepoint bought a large stock of old aircraft engines with a residual life of up to 10 hours. They can no longer be used on aircraft, but their operating time is sufficient for the necessary tests after repair and real flight phase, 3.5 hours. So they've got these old engines you can't put on planes because they've only got 10 hours left in them. So you're never gonna fly on them. They're not safe enough to fly. But actually, these guys only need them for 3.5 hours of flight. So make sure that they are usable and they can work for 3.5 hours, and then There you go. The purchased engines are being repaired and modified. Some of the structural elements are being simplified, and cheaper and easier to produce alternatives are being used instead of titanium parts that are resistant to wear. So they don't need to back up these engines to make sure that they can be used for another 6 years, right? It's like it's going to have one flight and then it's going to blow up. So we just use cheap pieces of equipment that can do the job for 3.5 hours. All this is necessary to reduce the costs and speed up the restoration work. Quote, there are thousands of such engines. We bought them in advance to have a stock before scaling up, but we need to think about tomorrow. That's why we are already building a plant under the license of a Ukrainian manufacturer to produce this engine ourselves from the beginning of next year, says Irina Turek, the company CTO. She added that some media sometimes write that Motorseek produces these engines for them, but this is not true. The developers actually found the current months-long stock in a landfill and restored it. At the same time, they're setting up engine production at their own facilities in close cooperation with the developer at various facilities to diversify risks. So, of course, if you put all of your eggs in one basket, then if Russia blow up that basket, you've got no eggs left. So they need to spread their production around. The Economist and other researchers recently suggested that the Flamingo was powered by the Soviet AI-25 jet engine, which was produced in large quantities for the L-39 Albatross training craft in Ukraine. During the Soviet era, more than 6,000 engines of this model were produced, and many remain in large quantities in post-Soviet countries, Asia and Africa. So they could get hold of these old engines, possibly from other nations. Thus, the only part of the missile that Firepoint does not deal with directly is a warhead, as mentioned. This element is manufactured and developed by other Ukrainian companies. According to Turek, a cluster warhead and many other types will soon be developed for the missile. Currently, the missile uses a penetrating warhead that pierces thick concrete and goes 10 meters underground. The company has almost completely automated missile production and divided it into many locations. As of early September, the production rate was about 2 missiles per day. Full cycle. The plan is to reach 200 per month by the end of the year, as we keep hearing. So here, Caliber Obscura says a lot of people were making very loud doubting noises about the Flamingo because of the AI-25. But this kind of move was obvious, as in the fact that the use of these clapped out engines gives time for adaptation of other types and for eventual production of superior solutions. So this is a great stopgap. And it will get from A to B with a little bit of tinkering, and it will be cheap. And it gives them time, get these out, get them used, find out whether they've got other issues that can be themselves tinkered with, and then you'll eventually get a production of all of this at hopefully a fairly reasonable price. Now, Trent Telenko says the Ukrainian language version of this article has a great deal more on the design philosophy behind the FP-5. He says a philosophy is utterly alien to the big, expensive few Western flag ranks and defense contractors. He says so. That's the one that we've been just reading. But actually, there is some more information in Telenko's thread here. Production systems engineering. He says, according to Turek, the design process for the Flamingo was the same as for other products. The rocket went through filters. Can we mass produce it? Will it be cost effective? Will it be effective on the battlefield? You can use anything. The main thing is that it works well on the battlefield, and not that it looks beautiful on paper or in advertising booklets. This is the main criterion. So you might have missile designers, BAE Systems or whatever, who will go to the drawing board and start from scratch, and they will be having all of these different criteria. They need to sell, at the end of the day, they're making a product to sell abroad, right? So it needs to look good, it needs to fit on a plane, it needs to do this, it needs to do that, it needs to be this, it needs to be that. Price isn't necessarily like a real driver, whereas these guys are like, right, it needs to be cheap, it needs to work, and don't give a damn what it looks like, don't give a damn about selling it on. This bad boy is going to be used by Ukrainians right now as soon as freaking possible. We just need to get a usable, half-decent missile out there. I'd imagine it would be something like that. So, it's the idea that you can use anything. The main thing is that it works well on the battlefield, and it not that it looks beautiful on paper or in an advertising booklet. So, the FP-5 started as a napkin idea in the summer of 2024, kind of compilation between the Soviet Strij and the very famous Western counterparts. The FP-5 enclosure is manufactured fully automatically on carbon fibre winding machine. The entire fuselage manufacturing cycle takes 6 hours. The use of composite materials reduces the effective scattering area, EPR, which directly affects radar visibility. In addition, it is stated that the missile flies at very low altitudes, never higher than 50 meters. The main idea of the development is to deliver 1,150 kilograms of payload very cheaply over a distance where no one has ever been able to deliver such cargo before. At the same time, range is not the main priority. Quote, some of our recent operations have proven that despite all the criticism, the Flamingo is very noticeable, very vulnerable, not maneuverable. It was still able to achieve its targets. And over the past 3 years, no one has been able to break through the air defense system. Yes, it may not be perfect, but it's not the main task either. The launcher and the whole system are also of the company's own production. We purposefully strived for cheapness and minimal visibility. I can confirm you can never tell among the trucks on the road whether there is a Flamingo missile inside or not. And this is our goal for the sake of staff safety, because any equipment with a military appearance on a battlefield is immediately noticed by reconnaissance drones, and this puts people at great risk. The accuracy of the Flamingo is declared to be at the level of 14 meters, CEP that is, including areas where we were actively jammed and spoofed. However, as Terek notes, the company still needs to collect more statistics. In our experience, accuracy depends not only on the technical capabilities of the missile, but also on the mission planning strategy. So that's an interesting point. If you remember, we were very much looking forward to these GLSDBs, ground launched small diameter bombs, these dumb bombs that were adapted so you could fire them out of like HIMARS, like a GIMLRS, a guided multiple launch rocket system. So you take a bomb, you put these kits on them, and then you fire them up, and they were kept on getting spoofed and intercepted or interfered with electronic warfare by the Russians. And the Saab Boeing co-production sort of had to go not back to the drawing board, but they were not ready to be used widely by the Ukrainians. But what Boeing did actually say is like, yeah, okay, we do need to work on electronic warfare resilience, but actually you guys need to plan using these much better. So you're not using them sensibly, and then you're complaining that they're getting intercepted or interfered with. But actually part of that is down to the mission planning. And that's a point that Firepoint is saying here, that yeah, okay, we can make them this accurate, but still you need to make sure that the mission is planned correctly. Currently, they say 14 meters is a repeatedly confirmed result, but of course, there may be factors that will affect accuracy. If this happens, we know how to work with it, but I'm quite satisfied with what we have now, because with a warhead of 1,000 kilograms, this is a very good result. We don't need more precision. So something like the HIMARS, the standard GIMLRS, I forget what the label of the missile is, but that will basically hit on a dime. You know, it's got like a 1 meter CEP. It's going to be pretty accurate all the time, although they can be interfered with as well. But they are much smaller. I mean, this is a big old bit of kit. So 14 meters for a missile that size is probably pretty decent. And they seem to be, as I say, quite satisfied. Damned by faint praise, maybe, but quite satisfied. We're perfectly happy, thank you very much, with the accuracy. We need to work on maybe a few other things or whatever. We don't need more precision, they say, because greater accuracy will mean the use of more expensive equipment, which will lead to a decrease in the quantity in production. Really important point. So you've got this trade-off of like, well, if we make it more and more expensive, we're not going to be able to afford to make so many. So we've only got this amount of money. Obviously the government's only going to pay this much or whatever, so we need to make it cheap. Now we could make it like cost $500,000 more to get like 7 meters of extra accuracy, or we just go, no, we'll just use more of them and hope that they hit. And if they don't hit all the time, then that's our calculation that's okay. So the trick for Flamingo now is to make it as massive as possible in use. The company is satisfied with the precision, almost satisfied with mass production, but not yet satisfied with the scale of launches, which mainly depends on the number of people who can go to the launch. What this article underlines is Firepoint engineers are focused on mass production engineering and systems engineering to get into mass production, and 80% solution to AFU's, the Ukrainian Armed Forces, military requirements, something post-Cold War US defense contractors are incompetent at doing. So he often has a go at, they're not being mass produced, too expensive, like drones is a good example. Building these really expensive drones that have been built by these defense tech companies that obviously have very high R&D costs, and they're going to charge a premium, whereas Ukraine's going and building these in a shed for $300 a pop, and actually they're really bloody effective. So what can the Americans learn, what can other nations learn from the Ukrainians here? But I think it's been a long time since Trent Telenko's done a really good thread, although that was mainly derived from an article. That's a very useful summary. Thank you, Trent Telenko. He also adds the FP-5 has been modified to be a railway bridge buster. So this is looking at Visioner here, saying a Firepoint company issues an official statement that it can pierce through thick concrete to the depth of 10 meters, as we've already mentioned, after which the detonation will occur. So that is rather sort of like a broach warhead, but not quite. So the broach warhead of, say, the Storm Shadow, and the Taurus I think does this even better, has a two-stage warhead where the initial explosion penetrates through the outer skin of a building or whatever, gets into the bunker. That's why it's a bunker buster, and then the second warhead explodes later. But possibly from what we understand here is not a two-stage warhead. It's just kinetic power gets it. I mean, it's a big missile. It's traveling at quite a clip. What's the speed? So we go back to the Wikipedia page. We have operational range 3,000 kilometers. Flight ceiling can go up to 5,000, but it goes at 50 meters. Maximum speed 950 kilometers an hour, and it cruises at 850 to 900. It has a guidance system that's GPS or GNSS with an INS inertial guidance backup. So I assume that the kinetic power of this missile just gets it through 10 meters of concrete before the warhead then explodes, after which detonation will occur. So that is very interesting. So railway bridge buster, that's why. And in fact, if we go and look at in fact, Visioner was talking about this last night. If we look at Visioner, I'm sure they were saying, and this is fairly typical really for every night, it's like, watch out, flamingos are being used. Yeah, during the night, Ukraine struck 2 more targets of the Russian oil infrastructure. Here's the one, blah, 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 blah. No, it doesn't mention the FP-5, but I have seen someone else mention that one of these was as a result of the FP-5 being used. Here we go. No, it's not that one. There's so much stuff from these guys. I'll find it. Give me 2 ticks. Yeah, here it is. It's N-Strike, one associated with Visioner. So breaking at this moment, last night it was claimed, there is total panic on Russian monitoring Telegram channels, which report that Ukrainians are carrying out a massive missile strike on the Crimean Peninsula with Neptune and Flamingo cruise missiles. Targets reportedly include the Crimean Bridge, as well as Krasnodar and Novoshakhtinsk port areas, where the Russian Black Sea Fleet is based. So this is, you kind of hear this on a nightly basis. It's not unusual at all. And I would speculate that very rarely is it a case that flamingos are flying into targets in Crimea, and particularly the Kerch Bridge. But with the ability of this, the capability of this missile, it could actually be a very real option for trying to take out the Kerch Bridge. Then we start getting on to questions about whether the Kerch Bridge is something that the Ukrainians actually want to destroy. Now, they destroyed part of it previously, and that has stopped, and that was really successful, and it stopped very heavy traffic going across it. I'm not even sure that the railway is still able to take heavy traffic across it, and the bridge, I don't think the road bridge doesn't allow heavy lorries across it. So that's probably ideal for the Ukrainians. Don't really need to spend lots of capital resources taking out the Kerch Bridge, because as Sun Tzu said, if there's a golden bridge for the enemy to retreat over, you don't want to destroy that. The Kerch Bridge is great for allowing the Russians to get the hell out of Dodge when you go to town on Crimea. But anyway, I just thought that was a bunch of interesting information concerning the Flamingo missile. It's all going to be about the actual production of this and also how sustainable that production is. So if there are only a certain amount of turbofan engines that they've got to use, maybe a month's worth, then where does that leave them thereafter? Have they created the manufacturing ability and facility for the engines? Or will they have created that by the time that they have run out of the stocks of the engines they do have? Are they still scouring the world for other such engines? So anyway, let me know what you think of the Flamingo. I mean, it I think probably has been used quite a few times. I mean, if they are really producing these at 2 a day, then they are going to be using them at 2 a day. So, they are being used, I would think. I'd be interested to see what the most effective target for them that they think is for the Flamingo. I mean, do you want to utilize the concrete, the kinetic impact and the ability to break through 10 meters of concrete, or is that warhead actually really good for exploding at a refinery where there's so much combustible material that if you send a smaller drone, I mean, we saw a drone bounce off, it was at Kobe or somewhere up near Murmansk, where a drone got all that way and then it bounces off the side of the oil tanker. So those round tanks just bounced off the side pretty much, and it exploded. So it got there, but it wasn't enough to penetrate that. Well, this will penetrate. So there are theories that they are using these on oil refineries. It wouldn't surprise me at all. You just get one of those through and it's going to cause an awful lot of damage. Anyway, as I said, let me know what you think. Take care. Speak soon.